Hello, and thanks for joining us for the Pharmacy Cannabis Lecture Series. Each session is designed to deliver a small and in-depth dose of cannabis education. I'm Candace Hawes, and I want to thank all of our viewers and customers for being with us from the Pottery and from the Pharmacy Santa Ana, Santa Barbara, and Berkeley. In this session, we're going to talk with 4 of the most successful and influential moms in the cannabis industry. Our cannabis industry and community leaders represent motherhood at different stages and will provide us different perspectives and helpful tips. I just want to give a brief introduction, and then I will allow the ladies to elaborate and tell us themselves about their journey into the cannabis industry. Our first special guest speaker is Amanda Jones, the co-founder of Kikoko, a cannabis wellness company known for their organic, plant-based products like their botanical mints, tinctures, herbal teas, and manuka or kanuka honey. Their products are excellent, so I would definitely recommend trying them out. Our next guest speakers are Carrie Mapes and Patty Pappas, who are the founders of Hello Again, a cannabis-based vaginal suppository formulated for menopause, but also helpful for women of all ages. And then our fourth speaker is Jessica Gonzalez, a mindful living and empowerment coach that leads an online social community of women and mothers at the Mommy Jane. And if you're not already following her, I would definitely recommend you do so, as well as following Kikoko and Hello Again. They all produce amazing content for mothers and for women. I'm delighted to have all 4 of these powerful, influential, and wonderful ladies with us today. When I put this panel together, I immediately thought of all of them as leaders in their particular niche, and I'm really excited to have them with us today. So I wanted to go ahead and start with a little bit of background information. So I'll give you guys all a chance to start, but Amanda, if you could start telling us a little bit about you and about how your cannabis journey led you to found this amazing brand, Kikoko.
Thanks, Candace. First of all, thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be here as a mother and as a cannabis entrepreneur, a potrepreneur. I got in completely errantly. I mean, I really had no intention. If you'd have told me 10 years ago even that I would be a cannabis entrepreneur, I would have thought you were crazy. But I was a journalist actually for 25 years. I was traveling the world as a journalist quite happily. And then we had a friend with cancer, and she had terminal cancer. I co-founded Kikoko with one of my very best friends, Jennifer Chapin. So hello again. There's 2 of us, two women. And we, at the time, our girlfriend was unable to find cannabis. This is 2015, where no one knew what was in anything. And she was unable to find products that really were titrated correctly, had healthy ingredients, and that were for women, and that were beautifully packaged. And it was actually her idea. She was the one who said, there's an enormous opportunity here. And this was 7 years ago now. There's an opportunity to come out with low-dose products for because women don't want to ride the crazy train always, particularly if you're a mother, you don't want to be ravingly high. And so we were the first to really come out with very low-dose products. And in fact, we were told we would be laughed off the shelves in dispensaries, but we weren't. Surprisingly enough, by the time we launched, there was a big need for low-dose products, particularly in the female community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Carrie and Patty, you want to go ahead and go share a little bit about yourselves and about how you guys came to found the brand?
Sure. I mean, not unlike Amanda, Carrie and I would never have imagined even 3 years ago that we'd be in the cannabis space. We were stay-at-home moms, both of us. We have 5 kids between us. And we managed our households, managed our kids' lives, managed our lives, and walked into a dispensary one day a couple years ago. One of the first products we saw and appreciated was Kikoko. And it was so accessible that we took it home and we tried different products. But we saw quickly, without a history of, we never had a history with cannabis, but we saw there was such healing potential and such abilities to sort of treat the symptoms that we were having at the time, which was the symptoms of menopause.
Yeah, we had a lovely bud tender who really sat with us, answered all these questions. I mean, our questions were like, do you smoke this? What is that? What is this? You know, I mean, really, this is a tincture. This is, you know, all of these things. We really, from the ground up, an education that day. But when we asked, what does that do? What does that do? What does that do? We heard that helps with anxiety. That helps with sleep. That helps with concentration. I mean, we just recognized in ourselves going through menopause and what we hear from our friends who are also going through menopause, we just drew a direct line between cannabis and the symptoms of menopause. And Patty's right. Cocoa was, I think that's the first THC I've ever ingested was a really approachable, beautiful product. So, and when we looked around for something that we wanted to use for menopause, we didn't see an approachable, beautiful product. And we also knew we didn't want to smoke or vape. So we looked left and looked right and realized there's an entire, space in these dispensaries that isn't addressing women of our age with this particular problem. So off we went.
That's wonderful. And Jessica, can you share a little bit about yourself and about what you're doing right now?
Absolutely. Like Carrie and Patty, I was also a stay-at-home mom and doing my best to, stay afloat with 2 children. At the time, I had struggled with a lot of depression and anxiety that does come along with having a second, or any child actually, but it had come strong with my second one more than my first. And I was using alcohol at the time and food to take care of my anxiety and depression, along with my prescription drug abuse. And obviously, because the prescription drugs weren't working, I was leaning into food and alcohol, which wasn't exactly healthy for me personally. So my girlfriend luckily reintroduced, because I always knew about cannabis and always saw it as a wellness medicine, but I never knew it was something that was a wellness medicine for me. I thought you had to have chronic pain. And my understanding was not, anxiety. In some cases, I thought it induced anxiety. And so I took it upon myself to understand cannabinoids and how they worked with my body. And once I discovered that, I really wanted to let other moms know the importance of understanding that there is an endocannabinoid system in our body, and that there are ways that we can use cannabis, and it doesn't have to always be THC. A lot of my wellness is actually came from THCV. I was able to lose a lot of weight from a cannabinoid that helps you feel just really energetic without having that starvation mode that generally comes with a lot of cannabis strains. And so I'm very grateful for the education that I was able to obtain in that time. But what wasn't really prominent were moms on social media discussing that education. So I took what I learned, applied it to a whole new page, because anytime I tried talking about cannabis on my Facebook or my Instagram, my personal family pages, it fell to deaf ears. And so I meditated on a name. First it was an M and a J, and then all of a sudden, there's a sign in my office. It says it's from Mother's Day, a gift my daughter had given me. And one of the biggest words on that heart is mommy. And so it was like resonating in my name. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, Mommy Jane. Okay, this is it. So it was really shocking to see how well it took off. And obviously there was such a need for mothers. There was such a dire representation that really wasn't prevalent at the time. I'm sure there were, and I just didn't see very many. And so I took it upon myself to put myself on the line, really, to share, my story and my life and my journey. And that's how I got here today.
That's amazing. Myself, I've actually been a cannabis activist for about 18 years, running a nonprofit.
Wow.
And for probably the first 15 of those, I was scared to have kids personally, because I've heard a lot of horror stories of mothers, having their kids taken away because of cannabis and stuff like that. So I was very apprehensive when I first started having my children. But I actually worked at a dispensary the whole time I was pregnant. And I was wondering, when is going to be that time where I feel uncomfortable, where people are uncomfortable with me and I have to leave. But fortunately, I never had that kind of situation. And I worked all the way up until the point that I actually drove myself to the hospital to deliver my second child. So it's nice nowadays that we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about, the fear of losing our children, that we have come a lot far away into society. But I also feel like cannabis has helped me be a better mother personally. It's given me a lot of tools. I don't have to resort to other things that could be more dangerous to relax, like alcohol and stuff like that. I can't even imagine having to take care of kids after drinking the night before. It's just not something that I think would work very well. That brings us to
it doesn't. Let me tell you from experience, it doesn't go very well.
So that leads us to the second question. So how has being a mother, you think, enhanced your position in the industry? How has it inspired you? How do you think it's made you a better business person, and perhaps gave you a better ability to connect with people? Do any of you guys want to weigh in on that?
Well, I mean, I think we can. we can start at least. We were not entrepreneurs. We did not come from the business world. This is not only, our first cannabis product, this is our first product period and our first really time spent in the business world. So being mothers, I think at the very beginning, we felt a little bit insecure about our lack of experience as business people. But what we really came to realize, and I think especially in the cannabis space that's ever shifting, what we came to realize is everything that we didn't know about business, we could learn. But all of the things that we learned as moms, we wouldn't be able to learn now on the fly. And that's resilience and the ability to be nimble and how to work with different personalities and, how to be resourceful and expect changes all day, every day. There's a reason that women love that game Tetris, because you're always fitting whatever is being thrown your way into the right space of the day. And I think those skills that we really probably undervalued when we started this venture have ended up being our biggest strengths. And it's all due to being moms, being the centers of families, dynamic families in complex communities with a lot going on.
Yeah, I would have to say that for me, when I first got into it, my kids were teenagers and they were going to this private school where, I'm not kidding you, they would say, you cannot let your kids know. They would bring in the drug people to talk about drug use amongst teens. And they would say, you cannot tell your kids that you use drugs. So I said to my husband, oh my God, we can't tell the kids. And then I got my legal card, back in the day where you'd get your card, your medical card, and I left it on the kitchen counter by mistake. And my daughter walks in and she just picks up and she goes, interesting. Just away. And at that point, it was time to say, okay, well, I'm starting this business, and actually, your mother is now a weed dealer. So
a lot of that.
So, but I do agree with everything you said. It also makes you realize that how the importance of low titrations as well, because we know that young people are doing this. What I'm afraid of is that our teenagers are smoking high THC products, and we know that does affect their brain. We just know that the amygdala is affected when they smoke a lot of high THC. So I do think that part of the education for me has been around giving alternative products, teaching young people how to use cannabis responsibly and properly for their own health. And that may be boring, and I'm sure young people hate hearing that, but it is true. You don't want to screw with that developing brain.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that I always advocate for. Even though I work with a dispensary and with a nonprofit that educates people on cannabis, we always advocate that try to put off cannabis use as long as you can. Even after you become 18, 21, the longer you can kind of offset that, the better you have to allow your body to properly develop. So thanks for sharing that. Jessica, I know that this is pretty much what you talk about all the time. So can you kind of share some of your thoughts on how cannabis is making you a better parent? A better person in the industry?
That was a huge reason why I wanted to start the Mommy Jane, because I wanted to show other moms out there that maybe were using cannabis or were unfamiliar with cannabis, that this was a new and honestly exciting way to take care of your health and wellness. So I tell everybody it's the gateway drug to health and wellness, because everybody always knocks it. And I'm not going to say it's not a drug. It is absolutely is medicine for me. It's my medicine. And so I do this for my girls. I believe that a huge influence of being a mom, with consideration to my children in mind, for the other people's children. This is for the future of health and wellness. I have a lot of history with negative experiences with the pharmaceutical companies. I'm not going to name anything, but my family's been in litigation because of the health detriments that it's been, provoked on us over the years, without knowing at the time, what was causing that problem. We just didn't know, but it doesn't mean there wasn't damage involved. And so I have it a little bit more out for the pharmaceutical industry than most people do, which is also why I am such an advocate. I'm not saying that pharmaceuticals don't work. I think they're wonderful and they've helped me at times, but there are also a lot of dangers to opiate abuse and, just drug abuse in general. And so I want to show women that, you have back pain, there are cannabinoids for that. There's topicals for that. There's, teas for that, suppositories. it's not always about, thongs and bongs. Is, that has a place in our industry, and that's very important. And, all culture is welcome, but we also need to represent all cultures if we're going to say all cultures welcome, and that really is moms are a culture that does not ever get represented. Google the Canamom hashtag. It's very small. Anything that's cannabis and parenting related is very small. And so we need to consider, like, moving forward, how can we make this a bigger thing for parents? How can we make this more of a non-taboo conversation where it's not so hush hush and it becomes more of like, okay, let's swap brands. Like, this is helping my headaches, what's helping you for this? And so I want that conversation to be able to be as easy as a playground conversation. Instead of saying, oh, did you see the newest wine from Trader Joe's? Well, I want to talk about the newest teas that are coming out that are going to help me with my menstrual cramps. So that's just where I'm at with my mission. I'm doing it for myself right now, but I'm also future thinking for my children. And that's why they're both making such a big influence and impact on what I do.
You're right. You have you or your child has a root canal, and now there's 30 pills. There are 30 opioids in your medicine cabinet at home.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing for me that would be worth sharing is that the one thing that I noticed with cannabis, because I never got blasted around my children, but I do cannabis every evening. I've given up alcohol. It doesn't work for me. I chill out teas and make mocktails out of those, or I take a mint or whatever, do something. And it made me a more present mother. And I didn't sweat the small stuff as much. And our house happened to be the house that there were always teenagers traipsing through it. And I never knew who'd be there for dinner. And I would freak out thinking, oh my God, a little bit of cannabis, it's fine. We'll make do. And I just realized that I was more present. I was more fun. And I was able to really focus on the quality of the moment rather than what was supposed to be, or what am I going to feed them, and that made it more pleasant for everybody.
Definitely, I can relate to that as well. So we talked about some of the benefits, but there also comes challenges trying to balance, working full time and, having a life and taking care of your children. So from your guys' perspective, what are some of the challenges that you've run into? I know that I talked about, being a mom in the cannabis industry and seeing so many people, in the past lose their children, or worried about being judged myself, like being like physically, you could tell that I was pregnant. What are some of the things that you guys have run across, or some of the challenges that you've had as a mother in the industry?
Well,
go ahead. Please go ahead, Patty. Oh, okay. I just left a very conservative city. I lived in Irvine for about 3 years, and it was really difficult for me to make friends there. They would find out, and a lot of them were really standoffish, like almost like you all of a sudden had cooties. Like they would take a step back occasionally on the playground when they'd find out what I did. And, it's really a shame, because I don't want to have a stigma, but I also don't want to prevent my children from having opportunities to play with moms. And so I will admit that I don't always disclose what I do. When I first started in this industry, I was writing for DCN. And so I would just be very vague and say I was a journalist. I didn't really disclose what I wrote about. I just said that I wrote, and they never really inquired too much more after that. So it's just really difficult, because there are definitely, even in California, people that are a little conservative still when it comes to cannabis, and they feel like if you use it, their kids are going to get high or something. I don't know. I have no idea. So, which I also want to showcase responsible use, which is why I always love, like, the stash boxes that lock up and the discrete methods of use, because we do as parents have to be more mindful about proper use so that our children aren't, dabbing into our dabs.
Yeah, our kids are a little older. All our kids are college and older. So I wish we had mentioned this before, that I had cannabis when my children were younger, because of that anxiety of, you put this pressure on yourself as a mom to do everything right, get everything done in a day, and to just sort of have just taken that down a notch would have been really helpful. But as a mom, or just being in our age space, I mean, we get mixed reactions sometimes, even from people that we've known for years, that just think we're doing some crazy thing out here and they don't want to hear about it. But I think for the most part, people are kind of either curious or really into it. But there's a little bit of discrimination out there against just this kind of crazy pot thing.
Yeah. I think our greatest challenge is about menopause.
Yeah.
We're walking into dispensaries with a solution for a problem that they don't understand.
Yeah.
So I think the challenge is more about our age and what is associated with that than the fact that we're moms. But that has been a challenge. Is walking into a dispensary, like I said, and having to do a lot of education with the buying staff and the selling staff about what menopause is and how this product helps.
With women too. I mean, it's shocking. Like you talk about starting a conversation and ending the taboo around something. I mean, menopause has just, they're not discussed. Yeah. Now it's starting to be talked about more. But it's amazing how women will be, will speak to them. Well, that's not for me. If we're doing a display day or demo day, that's not for me. I'm not old enough for that yet. And then you start talking to them like, yeah, I can't sleep. Well, yeah, I have anxiety. Well, yeah, I have this. I'm like, how old are you? 45. I'm like, okay, well, you might not know it, but so I mean, that's part of our challenge is to end that discrimination against just menopause. It's not some old lady disease that happens. It's happening right now. We're vibrant. We have a lot of time ahead of us. We've got a lot of things left to do. And that's the message we try to get out there as much as we can.
And Jessica, you were talking about doing it for your daughters. I mean, I think our daughters are going to have a very different idea of what menopause and this phase of life is. We remember it as what our grandmothers looked like when they were our age and what their lives were like. And, and hopefully they're going to remember it very differently.
And then Amanda, you talked a little bit about how your daughter found out you're a patient, and that was kind of like a challenge in itself. Like, how are we going to deal with this? Have you faced any other challenges being a mother in the cannabis industry?
Well, I would have to say not so much in the industry. I think it is the stigma out there. I mean, there are so many parents in the industry.
Nowadays, yeah.
Yeah, nowadays. I think when we first started, I was timid to tell people what I was doing. And then I thought, oh, bugger it, this is really, I'm playing into the stigma here. I'm a part of the stigma if I don't tell them what I do. So now I take enormous joy, particularly in a conservative crowd, telling people what I do, because they're shocked generally. Most people that my age and look like me, probably I'm be 59 shortly. They don't expect me to be a cannabis entrepreneur. So I really actually enjoy it a lot. And I immediately go into my educational mode and, talk about the difference between cannabis and alcohol or cannabis and pharmaceuticals, because that's what one of our missions is to help women get off pharmaceuticals and alcohol. And I will tell you that it is amazing because at first, I mean, my kids were at this school that was very posh and the people were, the Ferragamo shoe crowd. And so as soon as word got out, they would kind of creep up next to me and say, where can I find your products? Where can I get your products? And so now I think we need to all shout it from the rooftops wherever we are, because we need to be part of toppling the stigma. We're still dealing with a 90-year-old stigma, and it's ridiculous. And it's, I believe, a human rights violation that this plant is still legislated against and is not commonly available as an alternative medication.
Amanda, if the buzz of doing what you do ever wears off, please come hang out with us for a little bit and wait until you see their face and you say, and you put it up your vagina.
Yeah.
Yes. We have all these words: menopause, vagina, cannabis, all of it.
You guys bring up a good point talking about, what we talked about earlier about, other parents. I also face the same thing. My kids are super young. So they're just at that age where they're starting to develop friendships and stuff like that. And I feel like I also kind of have to keep my, my professional industry like under wraps until I get to know the parents. But I think that you're right. And that once I do let them know what I'm doing, that I will find more people than I think, that support and that are curious. And so, it's finding that right balance, like getting to know the parents just enough where you can kind of like pepper it in and then letting them kind of sit with it, think about it. And then they usually come back to you with curiosity and want to know a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to talking to your kids about cannabis, I know that we all have kids at different ages. So can you guys tell me some of the tips that you guys have for people that want to use are using cannabis, maybe their kids find out, or how to kind of lead them into that understanding?
Well, I can speak to that, having been outed quite accidentally, my own fault. But, I sat down with the kids and I talked about the medicinal. I think taking the track of the medicine and even showing them some of the clinical research that's coming out is very compelling, because you can't argue with the data. And if they're old enough, obviously, if they're 7, you're not going to do that. But I do think having them grow up accepting cannabis as a plant medicine that is controlled, it does get you high, and you need to, and then, as we spoke about before, making sure they're taking care of their brains, because we've all met those people that, you look at them and you go, you smoke too much pot too early, too often, too high THC, and it did affect their brains. And it's a fact. My degree is in neuroscience 1,000 years ago, so I care very deeply about the way that the plant interacts with the brain. And for most people, it's great. For teenagers, too frequent, too high use is, so if you can get your teenager to try edibles first, I think, which they won't do, but they might. Low dose edibles are really the way to go, because smoking it goes straight to the brain.
I think the conversation is abuse, and whether it's cannabis or alcohol or food or relationships or whatever it is that you're doing too much of for some other reason and it becomes unhealthy, then that's a problem. But I remember when my kids went off to, I don't know, high school, I guess it was, and we sat down and kind of talked about, you're going to be around alcohol at some point, you're going to drink alcohol, so let's just talk about exactly what you were talking about, Amanda. Let's talk about how to do that responsibly, and alcohol is not healthful, so I didn't have that angle. But if they were going to have alcohol, how to do it responsibly, how to manage their bodies, how to manage their choices, how to think ahead about what you're going to say and do in all these different conversations. So I think it's the same parenting challenge that you have with all kinds of things out there, but cannabis is certainly a healthier way for a young person to experiment.
I mean, the kids are going to obtain cannabis at some point. It's just a matter of them finding the right tools to it. And I tell my kids all the time, I think they get mad at me, but I'm always telling them, like, when you're ready, let me know. I don't want you getting it from your friends. Like, please let's walk you through the process. Like, as Amanda was saying, try edibles, try topicals, try tinctures. They do CBD products from time to time, but even then they have their stigma, even themselves. Like, I went to my husband's desk today. He had Advil sitting on his desk, and I'm like, so it is what it is. What I do, my family still is like, well, jazz, it's like, well,
in there in a license, you go to a licensed dispensary. You don't save me by going and buying something somewhere other than a licensed dispensary, et cetera, et cetera.
I think a very important thing, you raise a very good point there, because what most young people don't know, and even the parents don't know, is that the illegal weed, the stuff that they're buying on the black market, you have no idea what's on that. And there's often a reason it hit the black market and not the regulated. It's because it's heavy in pesticides, it's heavy in lead, it's got microbial mold on it, and you're smoking that and it goes into your body and it does not come out. It just concentrates. So that's something I think is very important to talk to kids about. And I've banged on with my girls about that, is really make sure you know where your cannabis is coming from and make sure that it's pure, and really spend the extra $5 or $10 to buy it from a legal dispensary. It makes a huge difference, because I have seen some of those, I'm sure you've all seen those lab reports, which is like, whoa, things that are in there that you do not want in your body.
Even for CBD only products, I tell my friends, because people will say, oh, I bought it at the drugstore and it didn't work. It did nothing for me. Well, what was it? We have no idea. If you're going to try it from a legal dispensary where what it says is what it is, and, give that pay the extra $5 or $10. It's worth it.
And if I can just add and get on my high horse here, CBD from hemp, when people say it doesn't work, damn straight it doesn't work. It works at about 350 milligrams a dose, and you're doing 10. But CBD in the presence of a little bit of THC works much, much better in the human body. And that has been proven time and time again. So don't fall for the snake oil.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like, the tips are raise conscious consumers, raise kids that understand that it's important to know what you're putting into your body, to only put the highest quality ingredients, foods, anything into your body, to be very, respectful of this vessel that we have for our whole lives. And then also the other key is responsible use. It's not just cannabis. It's not just alcohol. Like you guys said, it's relationships, it's money, it's sex. There's a lot of things that kids can get into trouble with. So teaching them from a very young age that everything is in moderation is a key to raising kids that are smart. And also, my kids are very, very young. We, of course, don't use cannabis in front of them, but they already know, to always ask. Even like keep it locked up, always ask, can I eat this? Is this an adult, candy, or is this like a kid candy, so they already kind of know because, they'll see us use them and then we'll put them away. And I'm like, this is for mom and dad. So even like candy bars, they're like, is this adult candy or kid candy? So it's like, they're indoctrinated even from being like so young. They ask and they know the difference, and they know that they don't want things that are for adults. So kind of, teaching kids that as well.
And the delayed introduction.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you can teach them at stages. And there's a lot of helpful books nowadays that they have out there. Like there's one like What's Growing in Grandma's Garden. And I know there's a couple that recently came out as well. So there's ways to teach kids at the age that they're at, so that they understand. So I know this is going to be really helpful.
If I can just say one other thing, though, if you do find out that your kids are smoking weed or eating cannabis, don't freak out. I mean, first of all, if I had to have the choice between my kids abusing alcohol or cannabis, I would 100% go for the cannabis, because at worst they're going to fall asleep. You cannot die from a cannabis overdose. It has never happened. It's not to say that if they got behind the wheel of a car, that's my one rule now. If you imbibe anything, you don't leave. And so that's the one rule at our house. You're staying the night if you do cannabis. But I do think don't freak out if you find your kids doing it. It's just a matter of frequency and finding out why they're doing it. I mean, they may be self-medicating, and it's really important to get to the bottom of that. It seems to me every teen these days is suffering anxiety. I don't know what we're doing to these kids, but anxiety is just absolutely rampant amongst our young. And I do honestly believe that many of them are using cannabis to medicate for that, or for depression or situational depression or whatever it may be. So don't freak out, and don't say never do it, you can't do it. Just talk to them about frequency and responsible use, and maybe ask why. How does it make them feel? What is it? What are they addressing with it?
Good point. I have a lot of mothers that reach out to me wanting to get into the cannabis industry and asking for tips. So can you guys tell us a little bit, some tips that you guys have for moms that want to get in the industry? Maybe perhaps how you balance having a career that you're passionate about and also managing your family? Jessica, maybe since you have the youngest kids, you could start.
Okay. Well, it's the tip is this: if you're interested in getting into the cannabis industry, if that's the question, I don't know if it's just working in general, but if it's the cannabis industry, I want those of you that are interested to be prepared to work and to work hard. I cannot stress this enough. I never anticipated, and I was not a businesswoman as well, and I'm still learning along the way how to be a good businesswoman. But if you have passion and you have a reason, you will succeed. You need to be able to designate time for your family, because this industry does not sleep. It does not stop. From 420 to up until Sunday is my crazy time of the year. I have a panel, a lecture, a talk, a giveaway, something every single day. And, if I don't take time for myself, like I did the museum today, I will go back, SHIT. So, being able to sandwich your rest time in between those times where you're going to be busy is extremely important. Those of you that follow me have seen me have very public breakdowns because I was not accustomed to balancing work and business life. It's not something that, or work life and home life. It was not something that was taught to me in school. It was not taught to me by my parents. My parents were workaholics. They owned businesses and they worked 70 hours a week. So I myself did not have the best examples. And because of that, I was not leading my most highest self in the beginning part of this industry. I was giving way too much of myself. So make sure that when you are entering the cannabis industry, that you set boundaries in the beginning, and you designate days where you do not go on social media and days where you do not talk about cannabis. Because when you're as passionate as we are, you can't stop. You know, it's regurgitating. It's like a flow, and I cannot stop. And it's something that I literally have to put the brakes on myself in order to pull back from, so that I can be a better mom, so that I can be a better creator, so that I can be a better influence. You know, I have almost 30,000 eyes on me not every single day, but you know what I mean, you know? And that's enough to make me know that, like, it's up to me to be a good influence for the eyes that are seeing me now, for the eyes that'll see me a year from now, that will see old content, for my children who are going to look back after I'm gone and see, what did mom do with her time while she was being the mommy Jane? And I need that to reflect in a positive way. So if you want to be in this industry, please, by all means, make sure that you have values set. Make sure you have your boundaries set. Make sure that you have time set for yourself, because this industry will take every second of you. And it's a beautiful thing, but also it can rob you of your time really quickly too. And that's my biggest advice, is that's where my downfall was, is not trusting my gut. If you feel that someone is not right for you, there is a reason.
Yeah.
If something's not working out and you're having misconnection after misconnection, don't force it. That's the universe telling you that you're not aligned with where you're supposed to be going, which is also what goes back to having those values set before you go into this industry. So that now when brands approach me, I decide, is this something that's going to benefit parents? Is this even going to benefit me? Do people even want to know about this? I have to ask myself those questions of relevancy, because maybe just because it's not for me doesn't mean it's not a great product, but I also don't want to talk about things that have no relevancy to who follows me. And I have a very important role, because not only am I influencing women to use cannabis, but I'm also influencing women to get into this industry at the same time. And if I don't show how it's done right, then they're not going to approach this mindfully as well. And we're going to have a whole bunch of women promoting the wrong products, promoting it for the wrong reasons, promoting it and falling apart. And then our industry is going to look like a mess. And I can't have that. So not that it's my responsibility for this industry to not be a mess, but you know, we are who we influence, and we have to put our best foot forward every single day in this industry. And that's the only way we're going to break the stigma. So when I tell those moms on the playground, hey, I'm a cannabis advocate, check out my page, The Mommy Jane, I'm not embarrassed. You know, it's something that I can confidently show and showcase. And if that's something that we are cringing about, why are we cringing? I have to always ask myself that. Jess, what is it that's triggering you? I always have to ask myself, because as I was mentioning earlier, I still have those moments of like, do I tell them? Do I disclose everything? And, you know, if as long as I'm living with my highest self in mind and putting my best face forward every day, then I have nothing really to be ashamed about in the end. And for those of you in the industry, just make sure you keep that in mind. You know, eyes are on us. Even if it's just 50, it'll be maybe 50,000 one day. So make sure you're doing it for the right reasons and you're doing it right.
Okay.
I think in some ways, Carrie and I are lucky to have started in business and in the cannabis business a little later in life, because like you said, Jessica, there is no time and no energy to waste. So we are constantly reevaluating, you know, what is working, what is not working, what is positive, not positive, what, you know, what we're beating up against that we can just let go. And I think that perspective for us, I don't think we could have done when we were 30 years old. I think we would have, you know, been a little bit more insecure and not thought that we knew what those things were, but we do. And you're right, Jessica, about the time. People, I mean, I get emails, they work all day. Most of the people we work with are in their 30s, and they're up sending emails at 12 at night or Saturdays or Sundays, which was unusual for me back a million years ago when I worked. You left Friday, you came back Monday morning, you had the weekend off. Now it's like ping, 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 you know, all night long. So you just have to turn it off, let it go, put it down,
Yeah.
and balance everything.
And I'd add also, don't compare yourself to other brands. If you're going to start a brand, don't compare yourself to other brands. And Amanda, you could probably you've seen much more than Patty and I have, but you know, it's really easy to look at a brand that launches with this fully developed website and a celebrity influencer and a gazillion followers and this big splashy thing. And what you don't know is, that brand's not around in a year because of a whole host of reasons why that didn't work. And to judge what you're doing for your brand, and for us, it's kind of slow organic growth. That's what we know our brand needs, and repeat customers and a community of people. We can't compare ourselves to a celebrity endorsed, smoke that just makes a huge splash.
I think that's a really, really good advice, because you'll drive yourself crazy if you do.
Yeah.
I like what you said about starting the company older, because that's what we did too. And as a mother, the time with my kids is precious, or was. They're gone now, but they were home when I was starting the business, and I wasn't going to sacrifice my relationship with my girls so I quit work at 6:00 every night, and I am done. I'm not the midnight emailer. And when we started our company, Jen and I sat down and we said, okay, we're going to start this company with rules. We started with 6 rules, and they're on our website, keycoco.com. And I really recommend anyone starting a business does this, because our rule number 1 is no assholes. Because we, at the age we were, had dealt with a lot of assholes in our lives. We'd both always worked. And we just said, this is our company. We're not going to deal with assholes. So we won't hire them. We won't take money from them. We won't do business with them. And because we wrote these rules and they're on the wall in the office, in the facility, we have to live by those. And we do. So often we have to hold ourselves accountable. Is this person not a very nice person? Are they exhibiting arsehole behaviors? Well, if so, it's not going to work out. So I really encourage people to go into this industry knowing what you will tolerate and what you won't, and when you're willing to walk away, because you don't want to degrade or take bullshit that you don't deserve. And so that's my advice to all women, including very young women, especially young women, because I think the older you get, the less bullshit you're willing to take. But it's a tough industry. Don't think it's easy. It is really, really difficult. And I don't want to put people off, but it is very difficult. Take a normal CPG industry and make it 10 times more difficult because of the regulation and the taxes and the hoops they make us jump through. And what
you can't advertise.
You can't advertise, exactly.
Yeah. Agreed. And but I'll balance it only by saying it is really exciting to be a part of such a young industry and have influence on the culture of how it develops. That part's really fun.
That's true.
Yeah.
Being that our industry is one that's always throwing us curveballs and is always making us pivot and think outside the box, I think it's suited for moms, moms that can multitask, who can, take on challenges and make it work and make everybody happy and create a great vibe and keep these morals and standards in mind. And so I really definitely, if there's moms out there who are thinking about entering the cannabis industry, but they're worried about the stigma, they're worried about the balance, there is a way to do it. Just definitely take all these tips that you guys shared into consideration. You guys have a lot of wisdom, and I'm really glad that you covered all those points, because that's exactly what I was thinking. So I'm really thankful for you guys being here today. Before we end, can you guys maybe just tell us a little bit more about how people can get in touch with you guys or find out more about your brands? We'll start with Amanda.
Oh, well, Kikoko is just KIKOKO.com. On Instagram, we're Kikoko_HQ. And we also just launched a line of high-dose products called X by Kikoko. Not for moms, not for most moms, but we heard loud and clear that wellness encompassed the high-dose user as well, as because some people just need more. They need more to treat themselves. But yeah, that's how to get hold of us. And I'm just Amanda at kikoko.com.
And then don't you guys have a THCV product that you just came out with too?
We do. And in fact, it was sold like that. It won't be back on the shelves until July, but in July it will be back. It's a mint called Boost. It's THCV and THC. It's fabulous. It's one of my favorites. It's an energy. As you said, Jessica, it's a nice, energetic little replacement for a cup of coffee type of thing without the munchies.
Yep.
I really think that's going to be the next breakthrough cannabinoid, CBN, and then after CBN, I think THCV. Whenever I talk about it, women are always very interested in the cannabinoid specifically.
Very expensive right now. That's the problem.
Yes.
It's very expensive.
I assumed, I was wondering because I've been talking about THCV since the beginning. That was the first thing I was telling you. This is the miracle. I've written blogs about it. This is the miracle cannabinoid to help me lose 100 pounds of postpartum baby weight.
Wow.
That is a tremendous amount of weight that one cannabinoid can do. So, and it's hard though, because I was sent to Oakland a few years ago to talk to buyers about raw cannabis and THCV. None of the buyers want to hear about raw cannabis and THCV. They want high THC, concentrate cannabis, and they don't want to deal with tinctures and all those things that are highly beneficial to our health and wellness. And so it's really difficult. I hope that the trajectory changes over the next few years, and with the pandemic making this an essential business, that the buyers are more open to understanding that in the Bay Area, yes, we do like high THC when needed, but it's a diverse industry, and if we're going to bring in that diversity, we need to have the products that are going to be comparable to what they need. And so I'm extremely grateful for women like Carrie and Patty and Amanda that consider the women in mind. I love looking at products knowing they thought of a woman. You can tell when products think of a woman, and it makes you feel so good inside, because we've been cast aside for so many years, and this industry is where else do we get to thrive in someone asked me one time, what's it like being an aging influencer? I'm like, where else can you find an industry that embraces an aging woman? Tell me, is the beauty industry saying 37-year-old influencers? Is the freaking alcohol industry putting out 37-year-old influencers? I don't think so. So I really appreciate that with age comes wisdom, and we understand that within this industry. We put those women on a deserving pedestal, and I look forward to growing old with this industry as well, and with all of you.
And then viewers can find you at The Mommy Jane, right, Jessica?
The Mommy Jane. I keep it as easy as possible, all one word, no spaces. And I just discovered today my first imposter account, so be mindful, okay? It's happening. It's getting to that point. So thank you all for joining me. I run a mastermind group at the end of the month on Sundays. If you want to find out more information, you can find it on the website. And thank you so much for the time today. This is such a phenomenal topic. Obviously, it means the world to me. And I look forward to having more conversations with everybody.
Awesome. And then Patty and Carrie, you want to tell people how they can get a hold of you as well?
We are helloagainproducts.com for our website, Hello Again Products for social, and pretty much Hello Again Products will help you find us.
Yeah, and I don't know if we were clear. Our product, we have 2 vaginal suppositories, one for daytime use and one for nighttime use. And they use THC, they use CBD, they use other botanicals to combat the symptoms of menopause, but without the psychoactive high. That's what we knew we needed to create for women so that they could feel like yourself again. That's our slogan and why we're called Hello Again.
And then also premenopause.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask you to describe to the audience, because I think this is so fascinating, why you don't get high from inserting? I think most people don't know that. And can you explain it a little bit?
I appreciate it. Yes. So you have cannabinoid receptors in your female reproductive tract. In fact, the most dense place is your brain, but the second most dense place is the female reproductive tract. So we are able to utilize the cannabis, the THC and the CBD, but let's talk about the THC, the psychoactive part, and get that to the receptors in that local area. And it bypasses the digestive system, and it bypasses the liver, where there's even more psychoactivity that happens there. So we're able to use the THC without the typical psychoactive high that would be related to the amount that's in our product.
Right. I mean,
and then the blood vessels and capillaries that are there also, take in what's in our product. But really the great utilization are all of those receptors that are right there in that local area. So that's why it's also helping with menstrual cramps, and it helps with endometriosis pain and bursitis.
That's what I use them for. Yep.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
What most people don't know is THC is the one that helps with pain. Most people think CBD is, but actually it's THC.
Yeah.
So that's really important for your product because it really works. I mean, really works.
Well, 20 milligrams of THC in our nighttime product, 20 milligrams in an edible, I would be at the emergency room. Yeah, I would not function. But so that was our tricky point. Should we put THC as people outside the cannabis space? Yes, we have to. How are we going to do it so that we can utilize it and not get you high? Vaginal suppository.
Yep. I kind of love the poetry of taking that space back and using it for wellness.
Love it.
That's like the worst thing that could happen on a virtual event.
Sorry.
It happened. I'm just going to ask one last question because it was sent in by one of the viewers. And this could be a short answer because we've talked a little about this a little bit. But do you guys think that being a woman and a mother makes it more difficult to get in the cannabis industry?
I don't think so. I think if you believe in what you're doing and you're 100% authentic about why you're doing it, I think it doesn't make anything more difficult.
This is women's time, people. It's our time to rise up and take half of everything, frankly. I mean, play half of government roles, half of roles in business, half of roles in the boardrooms. I live to see that day. So become a part of that. Join the industry, start your own company, speak up, speak out. And honestly, I think that there's something wonderful at any age you can get into the cannabis. I would hate to be trying to get a job in the tech industry right now at my age. I couldn't probably. But cannabis, it's while there aren't as many women as men, there are something like, I think we're back up again to about 38% of the industry of leadership is women. So that's the highest of any industry in the United States. So let's keep that going.
That's awesome. No, what about you, Jessica? Last thoughts. Do you think it makes it harder?
Yeah. Candace, you did say earlier that this industry was made for women, and I wholly believe that. Carrie, I talk about all the time how the endocannabinoid system was favorable for women. It's made for a woman to receive this plant. If you look at the biggest receptors that's in our area of reproductive and menopausal health, I mean, everything that has to do with women is focused right here. And the plant goes directly to it. So of course this industry is made for women and mothers. We benefit the most from this plant. Truly. We are the best advocates. We are the ones that have been in oppression for so long. This is finally allowing us to get back our physical health, get back our mental health, to be able to handle our day-to-day tasks, because the way the world was 100 years ago is not the way it is now. So our methods of wellness are going to have to come changing with it as well. How do we keep up? We keep up with cannabis. Educate yourself, understand the endocannabinoid system, get to know how it works synergistically, and make sure that you're getting full spectrum as often as possible in organic. So those are my final thoughts.
Yeah. And I think, if it may be a challenge, but that women are always up for a challenge. That's our strength. So it may take, a little bit of juggling and trying and relying on your support system, but there's definitely a way to make it work. If you have a passion and if you have a dream, I would definitely encourage people to get involved in the industry as a mother, as a woman, or just anybody that likes to help people. So, well, this has been a really great conversation. It was so easy and I enjoyed it, and you guys made me smile and laugh, and I really feel inspired after this. So I really, really appreciate your guys' time today. So thank you for joining us for this edition of the Pharmacy Cannabis Lecture Series. Thank you to our special guests, Amanda Jones, to Carrie Mapes, to Patty Pappas, and Jessica Gonzalez, as well as all of their teams, because their teams worked as well to help make this possible. So we're really appreciative of you guys. And I hope that we were able to share some information with our viewers that will help them become better informed cannabis consumers, and that the information we shared will help you find relief. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, Candace. Thanks. Great to be here.
Thanks, guys. Have a
Bye-bye.
wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.